Hello everyone, my name is Scalty. Today we're going to be looking at creating a revised reinforced iron plate factory making 20 items per minute, utilizing a lot of new features introduced in Update 5. I hope you enjoy. Before we get started on our build, let's go over a few things to note. First off, we're going to need 240 iron ore coming into the system. If you have Mark III logistics, you can get away with a single iron node. If you have Mark II logistics, you're going to need at least 2. I'll go over the discrepancies between 1 or 2 nodes coming into the system. It's not too bad. Other than that, you're going to need 8 smelters, 16 constructors, and 4 assemblers, and the overall minimum power draw for the factory is going to be 16 megawatts. The foundational area in front of you is 5 by 8, which is a little bit bigger than the previous design, but that is because we are going to be introducing some vertical navigation to this build, and also the sandwich layers are changing. Let's go ahead and jump right in. First off, you can see that we have a fairly high starting foundation area. It is 2 walls high. That gives us enough room to run some logistics in here because the inputs and outputs will be down below. Before we get on with that, you didn't see that, we're going to start with our output final storage. So we're just going to take a storage container, and normally what I would do is place it here where there is a little bit of a gap between the storage container and the conveyor wall up front. However, instead, we're going to utilize the new soft clearance functionality and bring it right up against it, so that way from the outside you cannot see into the structure itself. I think it's a little bit cleaner. You know, they've also introduced the new signs. You can go ahead and just place that right above the storage container. In addition, the output that we will be receiving the iron plate, the reinforced iron plates from, will be on the very front middle foundation, and we will get that connected up to the back of the storage container here like so. This will help to know between what is front and what is back when it comes time to actually do some logistics down below here. Anyway, let's head back up, figure out where we're going to put our smelters, so that way we can determine exactly how we need logistics to operate down below. Utilizing the blade runners for any kind of construction is super helpful. You can run faster, jump higher, take reduced fall damage, so it's pretty good. Anyway, let's get our smelters placed. We're going to need 8 of them. We want to place them 3 foundations in from the front and 2 in from the sides, and when placing these smelters, you want them to overhang the 2 foundations, like where they join together. You want them overhanging by just a little bit here. Let's go ahead and get our other 7 placed as well. Now we can go ahead and get our floor holes in place, and we want them placed just outside of the smelter. So essentially right where this little droop comes down, right next to that, and then similar on the front, just place them right on the edge of the foundation in the middle here. Once we have all them in place, let's go ahead and take our lifts starting from the smelter, as it is easier to get these placed. If you were to start from the conveyor lift floor hole, you'd have to essentially align, so you can see that I started from the floor hole and it's now not connecting to the smelter. You would also need to change the direction of the lift as well. But if you just start with the smelter input and output, it automatically assigns the right orientation and direction. So now you're probably wondering, okay, if the output of the smelters is going down into the floor, how do we get everything up to the next floor? Next to the smelters on the front and rear, 2 in from the corner, or 2 in from the sides and front or rear, we're going to place these floor holes. That's what we'll be using to transport our iron ingots up to the next floor. Let's head back down and get this all sorted out. Starting with between the smelters, we're going to take a splitter with the input facing toward the long edge of the factory, the long edge outside of the factory. Do that for all 4 groups, like so. So that way they are in line and also in the middle. And these are the wrong ones. Let me fix that for you. And now we can just go ahead and bring our lifts down. And now the two smelters toward the rear of the factory where our ore is coming in front of those, we want to place another splitter, and we want the input of this splitter to be coming from the rear of the factory as well. Now we can go ahead and get these all connected up with Mark 1 belts. Do the same thing over here on the other side. And now where we have our iron ore coming into the system, we are utilizing Mark 3 tech for this example here. If you have Mark 2, what you would want to do is turn this conveyor wall with a single hole in it into one that has two, and you'll run a belt off toward this way into that splitter right there, and then do the same thing over on this side to that splitter as well. Because we are using the Mark 3 tech, we're going to place the splitter in front, bring in our Mark 3 belt, and then we'll use a Mark 2 to bring these over to our splitters. Like so. Now that we have that sorted out, we now have the output of these smelters, getting them to the 4 outputs from this floor up to the next one. In order to run the logistics for that, let's go ahead and run our foundations, 8x1s, preferably. And this will provide the scaffolding in order to actually run the logistics. So we want the rear 3 groups, or I'm sorry, the rear 6 in groups of 3 toward the rear side of the factory. So next to all of these, we're going to take our smelter, our merger. We want the output of the merger to be facing toward the rear of the factory, and get these all lined up with the smelter outputs down below, so that way you can build a lift straight into the merger. You can go ahead and get a Mark 1 on in between the mergers, but then finally over here we need to utilize a Mark 2 lift and a Mark 2 belt. Be the same thing on the opposite side. Also, if the orientation of your lift is incorrect, where when you build it by default, there are green arrows that are indicating that that is the output, hit the R key and that will change directions for you. On these front 2 floor holes, you just want to use Mark 1 lifts facing toward the center of the factory. And then on the 2 outputs from these smelters here, you just want them facing outward, and then bring them together like so. I like to start from the what would be the output, so that way I can get a nice 90-degree bend here. And I'll delete the conveyor pulls below, just for a little bit more visual simplicity. Let's just double check and make sure we have everything connected. We have Mark 2 lifts for our iron plates as well as belts. Everything is connected down below here. We have these connected up with Mark 1 lifts. We have our storage container configured as well. We are all set. Let's go ahead and head back up. Starting with working our way toward the second floor, what we are going to do is at the rear of the factory, we're going to utilize the new stairways that were introduced. And we will have these facing up from the middle foundation outward. And it would be a symmetrical build like so. I'm going to just simply start with one side for now. And after the build is complete, I will complete the other side. So the first catwalk up from 2 steps, if you are building half a foundation in, will be this elbow piece or the catwalk corner. And then here we will do a T crossing. Do this here because we have a wall that will be here, so we don't need any kind of railing. We'll then take 2 more stairs and build up. And then just simply use a regular catwalk crossing here. Where am I building? Just built. Oh. Apparently you can build them within each other. Just want to make sure I don't have any extra duplicates here. That was interesting. Alright, so now we're ready to start our new sandwich layer design. We'll start with our normal foundations. We'll build these to the entire width of the factory. That's right, we are no longer having floating floors. And then we will also bring this an additional 5 foundations toward the front, or for a total area of 5 by 6. This will give us a little bit more room in our sandwich layer. Again, the sandwich layers are no longer floating, and so it'll be a lot more presentable and easy to work within. Once we have the top of our sandwich layer, let's go ahead and get our new 1 meter high wall and place that next to it. And I'll go ahead and just run it all the way down here, because that's what we're going to do eventually anyway. And then we will get our full frame window. You can also use a standard 4 meter high wall of some kind, or of your choosing. I like to use the full frame window. And when you're placing this wall, make sure you are looking at the bottom of the wall and not the foundation. You can see that the hologram switched from no clearance issue to soft clearance. We want to make sure that we have a full 4 meter height for our sandwich layer. Go ahead and build an extra 1 meter wall down below. We'll head back down, build a 1 meter foundation next to that. And now we can get in here and match the same area that we have at the top of our sandwich layer. Delete these extras right here real quick. All right. So now before we do any logistics down here, let's go ahead and get our constructors sorted out. That'll be making our rods and our iron plates. So if you recall down below, the rear 6 smelters, we have 2 groups of 3. I'm bringing 90 ingots up from here. We want those as close to our constructors making the iron plates. That'll be these 6 right here. And then the 2 in the front on each side will be for our iron rods. So let's go ahead and get our constructors in place. And when building these, you want to make sure that they are right essentially up against the foundation edge here. We got 3. We're skipping 1. Repeat the same thing on the other side. Get our floor holes in place as well. These are placed right at the foundation edge. Same ones, same location as the output side as well. Now here instead, we want to take our lifts and build them from the floor first, and make sure you change the orientation or direction of the lift. Get these all connected up to the constructors. Now that we have that sorted out, before we do anything down below again, let's go ahead and figure out our output. So in the open area that you have in between, go ahead and place a lift floor hole here, and then place one at the front and rear side of it with the one in the middle. That's just to kind of help you with placement. So this will be the output from this floor for our iron plates, and this will be the output for our iron rods. Now we can go ahead and head down below. So from down below, we have our ingots coming up here, 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 and here. If you always want to double check, go ahead and feel free to delete the foundation. You can see below where it's coming up from. We'll go ahead and start with the iron plates in the rear here. So we have our middle floor hole here. On the interior side of that, we want a splitter with the input toward the middle of the factory. And we want this located so that way we can build a lift straight down into it like so. And then on the exterior constructors from that group, we want them facing in towards the splitter and get them connected up just like this. Then we have our Mark II lift to bring up our iron ingots, and a Mark II belt to feed into the splitter. That is one side complete. We will now repeat the same thing on the opposite side. Now for the iron rods, similar but a little different. We're going to place the splitter in between the conveyor holes. Bring these down and connect them into the splitter. Bring this up the Mark I and feed it directly in. Get the same thing on the other side. Now for the outputs, all we need to do is place mergers in between each grouping pair and run it toward the middle. sure that is aligned correctly. So we'll have 3 for the iron plates, 2 for the rods. You can use Mark 1 belts for all of this. Mark 2 lift. I'm sorry, Mark 1 lift. Change the direction. We have the iron plates now. Get all this connected up. Mark 1 in between the rearmost 2 mergers, and then we're going to use a Mark 2 in between the other ones, because the rear, each pair of constructors is providing 40 iron plates. So we have 40, we have an additional 40 here, so that's 80, so we need to use Mark 2. And then we have another 40 coming down here. So we will continue to use our Mark 2 lift, and a Mark 2 belt. Make sure everything is connected up correctly, and that we have the right logistic tier. So Mark 1, that's for our rods. We have Mark 2 lift and belt for our iron ingots. Mark 2 lift and iron belt. For the ingots for the iron plates, rather. Mark 1 for the first pair, Mark 2 for the second, and Mark 2 for the remaining iron plates, and then Mark 1. So this floor is now complete. So what we can do is go ahead and get the rest of the walls in place and windows. When it comes to putting any kind of walling on the sandwich layers for these, especially because we're now connecting to the outside walls, do not place any walls on the exterior edges. Only place them on the rear and the front, or at least with this build. To quickly demonstrate, when placing the walls on the outside of your factory, they will now no longer align. So you can see that if you were to place walls, you would have some soft clearance issues, and it could ruin the exterior aesthetic of your build. So make sure you do not do that. So now we have everything sorted out for this floor. Let's go ahead and get started on our next one. Yeah, we'll start over here. Again, 2 more stairs up, corner, T, 2 more stairs up, and then we will do a straight catwalk crossing. And this floor will be for our screws. I'll go ahead and get the sandwich layer built here quickly. So for the placement of our constructors, now that we have the floor holes to utilize, we no longer need to ensure that constructors are in alignment, center alignment with foundations to align with the conveyor floor wall holes. This is going to be difficult to keep these in words. Yes, so now what we can do instead is we can place the constructors over the conjoining portion of 2 foundations. So we're going to run 3 constructors in the exact middle on one side, starting with where the middle foundations join, and then repeat the same thing on the other side. And get our floor holes in place. All right, and now the outputs for this floor, starting from the rear, look at the middle foundation here. Place it on the edge of the foundation, like so, and then we'll put another one on the center of the foundations next to it. The 2 here will be for iron plates, and the outer ones will be for our screws. Let's go ahead and head down and in. So, we should have our input and output right here. Go ahead and get the floor holes in place for that. Again, the front is for our iron rods, the rear is for our iron plates. Let's go ahead and get the iron plates sorted out, as they are not going to be really doing much of anything except going up to the next floor. So on the rear center foundation, we can place a splitter with Mark 1 lifts going up. Bring a Mark 2 lift here specifically. And a Mark 2 belt heading in. So essentially we'll have 120 iron plates coming up, splitting into 2 lines of 60 that go up to the next floor. Now that we have that sorted out, let's go ahead and take care of the output for our screws, so that way it's easier to handle the input for the rods. So we know that these 2 lift holes are for our screws. So similar to what we did with the smelters down below, we're going to place our mergers right next to the floor holes coming down. And we want the output facing the rear of the factory. Oh. Back here, rather. Now in between, do a Mark 1 for the first 2, and then at this point we'll have 80 screws, so we need to do a Mark 2 belt. Then we'll do a Mark II lift going up, with a Mark II feeding into it. Now you can either choose to connect it like so, or the other option is you can do a Mark II belt and ring it off and have it face toward the merger to get a nice tight curve, and then do something a little bit more straight. Totally up to you. There's no wrong way to do it. Now we just need our Mark I lifts coming down into each of these mergers here. That's one side complete. Let's go ahead and repeat on the opposite side as well. Oh, place that in the entirely wrong location. Now for the iron rods coming up, we can go ahead and just have them split. Oh, the lift is facing the wrong direction. Want that to be an output to this floor. And now we have our 3 inputs into the constructors on one side. So at the frontmost constructor, again, front is toward where we have the input coming up, or you can kind of visualize or observe where the stairs going up are located. So the frontmost constructor, in front of it, we want a splitter with the input coming from the front and in alignment with it. Like so. Place a lift here. We can go ahead and bring over our rods. And now for the remaining 2 constructor inputs, we can go ahead and just take a lift. It doesn't matter which direction you do this one, but the one you do after that, you want it facing the opposite way. So for example, we have this one facing out here, so we bring this over to this splitter right here, and then repeat with that one there. Now when we repeat the same thing on the opposite side, we will just mirror exactly what we did in terms of which one was facing toward the interior of the factory and which one was facing towards the exterior of the factory. So if we look over, the one in the middle is facing toward the exterior, so we repeat that same thing, and then this one obviously alternates, and then get it connected up. So let's just double check and make sure all of our belts are running at the correct speed. So we have a Mark II lift coming up for the iron plates, Mark II belt feeding into a splitter, which then goes up into Mark I lifts. That is totally okay. From the rearmost, we're starting with the output of these screws. Mark II lift, Mark II belts into the merger, and then the one on the opposite side of that is a Mark II as well. So we have a Mark II, Mark II, Mark II, and Mark II. Everything else on the floor can be Mark I. We can go ahead and get started on our next floor. So again, 2 more stairs up. Corner, T, stairs. And then for the first 2 here, we will just do catwalk crossings, but because this is the topmost floor, we'll go ahead and switch it back to the T crossing and have the rails on either side like so. And then we'll go ahead and get this sandwich layer built as well. When it comes to the placement for the assemblers, we want to start with essentially what is the second foundation in from the rear corner. So we have one here, so we want to start with this one as our focus. We want the assembler to be placed in a very similar fashion as we have all of our other machines. We want it right up against the foundation edge here. Do the same thing over here, facing toward the front. And then before we place the other two, we're going to place our floor hole like so. Place a merger in between just for measurement. Place another floor hole and get rid of that merger. Now we can identify how close we need to build the next assembler where we have a little bit of soft clearance. Get the remaining floor holes in place and lifts connected. Now that we have that connected, we can go ahead and take care of our logistics down below. So from below, on the rearmost foundation, we have one coming up from each edge. And then the foundation next to it, we have one coming up from the center. Ones coming up from the middle here are our iron plates, and so we're going to connect those to these two lift holes here. So for this one, we're going to take a splitter, line it up directly with both of these with the input toward the rear. Again, mark 1 lift is adequate for right here. Then bring this directly into the assembler. And then before we continue on, we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side here. Oops. I want the splitter to be placed first. Now before we continue that on, we're going to handle the output of our factory. So down below is where we have our floor holes. We will build one additional foundation here and here to cover that up. Build a floor hole in the middle of this foundation here. So these 4 floor holes are the outputs. So in between these, we want to place a merger facing toward the middle of the factory. Like so. It's connected up with a Mark 1 lift. In the middle, do the same thing again with a merger facing toward the front of the factory. Use a Mark 1 lift going all the way down. The reason why we wanted to get this taken care of is because now we have to take the output from this portion or this face of the splitter and bring it over to this lift here. That's where the new height of the sandwich layer is going to come in handy. Let's go ahead and take some stackable conveyor poles and build those. Essentially you can do on the foundation line here, or you can do on the half. And back here I would recommend doing on the half as well. This. And then feeding up into that assembler. Take a Mark 1 belt like so. And get this connected up into the splitter. Repeat the same thing on the opposite side. So now we have no clipping, but now we can also crisscross our belts. Let's go ahead and get our screws sorted out. So we have 120 screws coming up over on this side. And we have our input into the assemblers there. So on the exterior side of where that wall hole is, go ahead and place our splitter with a Mark 1 lift coming directly down and into it. Something is a little off. Hold on, let's see if we can sort it out. There we go. Oh, that is a merger and not a splitter. That'll do it. There we go. My mistake. Get that connected up, and then we bring a Mark 2 lift over here. And I still placed the splitter orientation in the wrong direction. There we go. And now for the output down here, we'll go ahead and take a lift from the front assembler, face it toward the middle, and then from here I will start a Mark 1 and get a nice tight curve, as tight as the curve can be, and connect it down to that splitter. And once again, we repeat the same thing on the other side. for where we have our output when it comes to the glass. We'll just place it on these sides here, as this is an exterior facing wall. Go ahead and get our glass in place here as well. And we are all set on this floor. So we can get our 1 meter walls in place, close this in. Do the same thing down here. I would also recommend to not forgetting to apply the material that you would like to use, which I really enjoy the concrete. And now we need to get all of our floors connected. So in order to do that, we want to take an 8x1 foundation and build it where we have the lifts that will be going up. And then we will take the small frame pillar, build that twice down from the 1 meter foundation. Delete the 1 meter foundation. Now we have a gap here. Just go ahead and build the frame pillars. Leave the bottom ones for now. And so again, the rear here, these are bringing up our 90 iron ingots. So you want to make sure that you use Mark II lifts. And when bringing these up, you can scroll and dictate which direction these lifts will be facing. I like to have them facing toward the interior so I can see material going up. Once you get the lifts in place, go ahead and put the frame pillars in. We'll go ahead and take care of our final output while we're down here as well. Then we can just zoop this down like so. And here we can just use a Mark I lift, and I'll have the lift facing toward the front. The front lifts here can be Mark I. And when building the lifts up, you want to make sure you hear the snapping. If you don't hear the snap, then the lift is just going to be built arbitrarily, and it won't actually connect to anything. Let's go ahead and get the remaining floors connected up as well. The side that has the 6 constructors, you want to make sure that you are using a Mark II lift. This I will just have facing toward the rear of the factory. Mark I lift for the iron rods facing toward the front. For the screws, you want to make sure you're using a Mark II lift. And again, I will have this facing toward the center of the factory. You can use a Mark I lift for the iron plates going up. And then if you need to do the glass on the front here, just build temporary foundations out. Get your walls in place. All right, now that we have that all sorted out, we can go ahead and make our stairs symmetrical. Put some glass on the exterior side, get some power all routed up to this. That is essentially build complete. I'll see you guys on the other side. Alright, and that'll wrap up our build. I hope you found a lot of value in this tutorial. If you did, feel free to leave a like, it does help out the channel. If you want to see more content in the future, be sure to subscribe if you are not already. And if you have any questions about the build, leave a comment below and I'll respond as soon as I can. Additionally, I'm still exploring all of the new features added in Update 5, so go ahead and follow me over on twitch.tv where I will be occasionally streaming and experimenting and exploring all of those new features. But with that, thank you so much for watching, take care.